Today I will be going over the installation and setup of the Virtual Roll Call Briefing web application as of version 6.0. The first step is to visit XAMPP, which is an Apache plus MariaDB with PHP and Pro application that allows you to host your own web service. The download link depends on what operating system you're using. It does work for Mac, Linux, and Windows. And once you have that downloaded, in your C drive, you will see a folder that has XAMPP. You must click into there. Run XAMPP control as an administrator. And make sure that the Apache and the MySQL services are running. This must be run as an administrator, otherwise you will not get the option to select the check mark here. Once the web service is up and running, you will then use the files that were given to you, which contain the entire code directory for the project, and place it here in htdocs. Make sure that you give it a separate folder in case you have other projects that you've worked on in the past. And this will then allow you to get access to both the database and the application files of the project. Your version may look different than what you see here. This is the version of the code for 6.0. Once you have the code in the htdocs directory, you then want to go to localhost/php myadmin. And this will be the portal where you will manage the database itself. I currently have two different virtual roll calls databases, but you will only have one. Now this part of the process is very important because it can go two different ways depending on what you would like to do. So the first way, which would be the standard way, you would go into the files of the application, traverse to the database folder, and you'll see a couple of different SQL files in here. You want to open the VRC schema new with whatever text editor that you use. In my case, it's Visual Studio Code. Once you have that open, you'll see that it is a lot of different SQL statements to create the tables of the actual web application. You want to copy from line 349 up to the top, the very first line, the code. Switch over to PHP myadmin, click SQL, paste, ensure that everything was copied over. And click this Go button. I'm not going to click it because I already do have the database in the system. However, once you do click that Go button, you'll have an entry here on the side for Virtual Roll Call. And if you expand it, you'll see a lot of different tables that are used in the application itself. The next step for the setup of the database is to open this procedures_new file in your text editor. You'll be doing the same concept. Highlight everything, copy it, switch over to your PHP myadmin. However, in this case, you want to make sure that you select Virtual Roll Call. You'll see an interface like this that has a structure of all the different tables. Switch over to SQL and paste. And once you hit the Go button, you will then have this secondary tab that you see here in procedures that will have the 3 stored procedures that the application uses. Now, once those 2 tasks are done, the database is more or less set up. There is one more portion left, which is where you can branch off depending on what you want to do. In the files of the database inside of the VRC schema new, all the way at the bottom, from lines 357 to 372, you'll see a couple of different insert statements. This is the insert statements that you need to have the application functional. The first one just adds an administrative shift to the database. The second one adds the admin account with the default password to the database, which that is found inside of the credentials file, inside of the database folder. The third insert statement is for the Google Maps API. This is our key, but you will have a different key because you will need to set up your own account. And the last one is for the 4 different document statuses that documents can have. If you decide to go this route, then you'll be adding your own files to the database as you go and test it out. However, we do include the original data that's currently being used in production for the VRC application. So this has a lot of different test data that you can use to fill the database in the case that you want to see how the application looks once it has data. However, one key thing to note is that if you decide to use this insert statement in this file, then you cannot use the insert statements that are in the VRC schema file because they will conflict. You'll get errors if you attempt to do so. In this file, it has some of the same things for the document status, for the API settings. It adds different shifts, and it also has the administrative user, which also has the same password and username combination as in the credentials file. Once you have all of that set up, you will then go into the application files in app php dbhandler_new. Once again, open it with your text editor. And in here, you'll see a couple different, at the very beginning in the constructor, you'll see a couple different parameters that you will need to fill. For the most part, if you are setting up XAMPP for the first time, the default username is going to be root and the default password is going to be blank as you see it here. However, if you have used XAMPP in the past and you have changed your username and password, then you need to accommodate and put your current username and password for your MySQL instance in this file. The DB name will also most likely stay the same unless you, for whatever reason, decide to change it to a different name. But in this case, using the VRC schema that we provided, you will have virtual roll call as a database name. Once you have all of that set up, you can then go into localhost, traverse to the application files, into the directory, use the admin username and password that's provided in the credentials file, and that should redirect you to the login to the main page of the administrator for virtual roll call. That about wraps up the setup for the virtual roll call briefing application. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Masood Sajadi, the Senior Project Coordinator at Florida International University. Thank you.